Later on, after the 10 o'clock news, we're going to talk about distracted driving. We're going to do that with a man whose responsibility inside General Motors is to study just that. And Dan Glasser will be with us. At 11 o'clock, our Kids World, which happens tomorrow. We'll tell you about that on Focus. But for this hour, I am holding in my hand what can only be described as an endangered species. I am holding in my hand a physical copy of a newspaper. In this case, the Midland Daily News, which, if I'm not mistaken, is still a daily.
6 days a week.
6 days a week. Well, we'll find out about that because that voice belongs to the editor of the Midland Daily News, and we say good morning to Dave Clark.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me here.
Oh, thanks for coming in, Dave, and you can thank Paul White for sucking you into it. I have to, before we get started into the media and all of that, what's your background? How did you get into the newspaper business, and why?
Oh, it was a dastardly reason. I used to go to the grocery store with my mom, and our deal was I go to the grocery store with her, those big magazine racks, if you remember those.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And if I went with her, I could buy a magazine. She would let me buy one if I unloaded the groceries.
Oh, so you
it was
worked
a good,
for money.
Good deal, good trade. And standing there at the magazine rack one day reading Rolling Stone and reading a review of the latest Van Halen record that had come out, my favorite band at the time, and vehemently disagreeing with it. I decided, you know what? I could do this. And it appears that people make a living doing this. Why not check this journalism thing out? And from there, high school papers all the way through Delta College, through CMU, and then started my career right here. Started at the Midland Daily News, actually, as a freelancer. So they would give me assignments to do on weekends, and cover the fair and things like that. And then I returned to be the editor, so full circle.
Yeah, but in between, you took time out to teach others how to be journalists.
Yep, as was the case in the 90s. Any Gen X journalist knows this. You bounce around all over the place, and for me, it was in the state of Michigan, Hillsdale, and Adrian, and Big Rapids for a while, and then I returned to my alma mater, Central Michigan University, and was the director of student media. The advisor for the student newspaper, the award-winning, nationally renowned CM Life, of which you have a couple of people here.
We've had more than a couple through the years. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I started out, Dave, holding up the newspaper and saying I'm holding in my hand an endangered species. On a national basis, we'll take the local out for a moment, but on a national basis, that's a true statement, isn't it?
It is, and it's an interesting phenomenon. The physical newspaper, the thing that we still like to hold in our hands and flip through, and clip out articles and save those or share them. It's an increasingly endangered species because it's very expensive to produce. It's expensive to distribute. We understand all the way across the country in every business, especially retail and things like that. It's difficult to find help. It's difficult to find people that want to do those jobs. Likewise, it's difficult to find somebody who wants to run a press and be covered in that ink at the end of the day. It's difficult to find parts for that press. It's difficult to we've got tariffs we're talking about with other countries. The paper that we buy largely comes from Canada, so there's tariffs to consider, things like that. So where once it was maybe the most affordable way to share information, the penny press, and back in the 20s and 30s, it's now probably the most expensive way to deliver the news, and not as fast either, as opposed to the newsletters that we send out every day, or of course our website.
I have never worked for a newspaper in my life, but always read them, obviously. Here's my biggest worry about newspapers, and see if you relate to this. My question is, who is the keeper of history? And by that I mean, if I wanted to know what happened in Saginaw in 1928, I could go to the library, sit down at the microfiche machine, go through every newspaper back then until I found the day I was looking for and read what happened that day
Sure.
in Saginaw. Who's keeping that history today? Now, in your case, you still have the Midland Daily News, which
Sure.
is still a daily, at least 6 days a week. But who's keeping that record?
Well, we are, and there's others, and certainly in this area, MLive is doing the best job that they can doing that as well. And throughout the state, we've still got our Detroit Free Press and Detroit News, and every major city still has some presence of a print newspaper. But you're right; it's increasingly scaled back from what it used to be. Now, again, as the print piece is changing, the online piece is growing, and is growing exponentially every year. And that's kind of the weird dichotomy here, is the format of one piece of our delivery system is in decline. The other is growing at a very rapid rate. So there's going to be a digital archive of those things in terms of keeping our community's history. But for some communities, they've already lost the print piece of that. The weekly newspapers, we lose a couple hundred of those a year all across the country, and some of the dailies too.
Well, I'm here in Saginaw, a bigger town than Midland, down to 4 days a week, I think.
Yeah.
What allowed the Midland Daily News to survive?
Well, that's a great question, and the way I answer this is sort of two parts. First and foremost is the community. They're extremely supportive, and they demand that we keep that piece, and so you have to support it. Before we're on the air, we were talking about the media, and it is a business. I mean, you need customers, and you need customers who are willing to support you with subscriptions. I mean, that's the key. Largely, the print newspaper has not become a habit for a lot of people my age, and certainly for a lot of people younger than somebody that's in their 50s. So that's part of that. What we really are focused on right now is trying to convince people and remind them that to have an organization in your community covering the happenings, so politics, crime, your schools, all that really important basic building block stuff of every successful community. And here, the Saginaw Spirit, what an amazing story that is to cover, right?
Yeah.
To have that, you need reporters. And to have reporters, you need to be able to pay them. And how do we pay them? It's with those subscriptions. So those online subscriptions, I know people go on the internet and think, I should be able to read this for free. But the creator for that also needs to pay their bills.
But in some ways, that was part of the downfall of some newspapers.
Sure.
Because the notion of going online and reading it for free, they didn't recognize early on. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. In the early days of online, when we still had the Saginaw News, you could go online and you would see headlines, and if you click on it, it would say, well, for X dollars you get 6 stories or whatever.
Right.
But if you took the headline and put it in your search engine, you'd get it for free. The newspapers were defeated because they were, giving it away, in effect.
Sure.
And took them a long time to fix that, to get around it.
Yeah, that's the problem with technology. It provides us with a whole bunch of opportunities and also a whole bunch of obstacles.
Right.
And probably the biggest obstacle, and this continues today, is just trying to convince people that online subscription is really the lifeblood of what we do. So if you want to have somebody cover your kid's football game, or you want to have somebody at city council or the school board meeting, you need to be able to support us so that we can have somebody there for you.
And how many employees do you have today versus, say, 20 years ago?
Well, I wasn't there 20 years ago, so I don't know if I can answer that for you.
You can try.
But, it's significantly less, for sure. And part of that is because some of the jobs have changed. We don't have as many salespeople. We don't have as many people who did the production work that actually created that physical newspaper. So the paste up and designing ads and in a dark room developing film and making prints and things like that. All those jobs are largely gone because technology has changed the way that we do those things. At the root core of the newsroom, the number of reporters we have, it's probably half of what we would have had 20 years ago. So as opposed to 15, it's 7.
Yeah. Well, and
that's a pretty good number for a newspaper our size today, is to have 7 people in that newsroom.
Well, and the room you're sitting in right now is a perfect example of that, too, because it's not just on the print side. Everything is in a computer.
Sure.
And where one time we had 2 stations and 65 employees, and now we have 5 stations and probably 30 or under, That's the media, though, around the country,
right,
in all forms. We're going to have to take a break, and when we return, we will continue our conversation with Dave Clark from the Midland Daily News, where he is the editor, and we'll talk more about the media and where it's at, where it's headed, and we also probably will define the word media, because it's a lot bigger word than you think it is. Everybody thinks the media, they think news right away. But guess what? The media is far more than just news. We'll talk about that when we return here on WSGW.
Rocket Grab Plus.
Into positions.
Sure.
That when you read the news, you're not sure if you're reading the news or the editorial page.
Well, remember, we said this is a business. So we've got people nationally that I think are making just business decisions to, really focus on a particular point of view and then go straight to that audience to sell that product to them. So you sort of know what you're getting. I mean, in a lot of ways, when you look at our national media, whether it's cable news or whether it's some of the bigger newspapers that are still out there or TV stations, it's really just Coke versus Pepsi, right? I mean, it really is that kind of a.
The problem is the end users have at times not figured out how to separate the news from the opinion and take everything that, we're creatures of habit, and we like to hear what we want to hear.
Sure. We like people to agree with us.
So we tend to, migrate to that opinion. So consequently, we never hear the other side.
And that is really the challenge of 21st century media, is how part of it is media literacy. So are we teaching people what that means? We talk about that word objectivity a lot, and what does that mean? And there's also point of view. I mean, point of view is certainly a thing that you can do. Before the Midland Daily News was the Midland Daily News, it was the Midland Republican, and it said that right in the banner. And we had newspapers like that ever since Mark Twain was working on.
But I could pick up the Midland Republican and still read the news without knowing it was a Republican. I'd have to go to the editorial page to know that it was Republican.
For the most part,
well,
for the most part, that is true.
Nothing is perfect,
and it certainly would have been clearer than today. There would have been more, I would say, neutral stories in there, just the facts from the Associated Press.
What, where, why, when,
yeah,
how, the basics.
Absolutely. And today that is not necessarily the case. A lot of the audience has sort of formed its own tribe, its own group, and they seek out news sources that don't necessarily inform them, but it's more confirmation bias. They seek out people that believe the same things that they believe, and then therefore their information reflects that. And that brings up the idea: is it really news then? Is it really?
And you brought in a copy of the Midland Daily News, which, by the way, I have to say, probably, I wouldn't call it a shadow of itself, but it's certainly a slimmed down version of what it used to be.
Sure.
And that, again, is a matter of business and economics.
Matter of business, economics, also audience. We could do another section with a whole bunch of AP stories and things like that. Audience has said, I get that from a lot of different places. I don't need that from you, especially if it's going to add some cost to the product when I buy it.
The other side of that, though, is the publisher saying, does it add advertising space?
Yeah. I mean,
does it somehow enhance the income of the property?
Now, when you flip through that paper today, you'll notice in the news section that every page is local content.
Yeah, I did notice that.
And that really is what we're selling. The
right.
industry term, so all those executives sound super smart, right? They had to come up with the term hyper-local.
Hyper-local, yeah.
Yeah, well, local is the point, and that's what we believe in, and that's why you see on every page there's local content, and there's a few stories that we'll sprinkle in that we think are important, some statewide things, but that is really the news of the community of Midland for that day, and that's the point. And not all of it made it into that print edition.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of stuff on our website, ourmidland.com, that didn't make it in there just yet. So if you really want the news first, online's the way to go. You can go on the website several times a day, follow us on social media, that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, I send you, if you're a subscriber, a newsletter. We also have a free one that you can get. You can sign up for that. Go to our website and sign up. And then, at the end of the day, you're getting home at 5 o'clock or whatever that is, and you've got the physical paper that you can look at.
And that, when I've had to talk to college-level broadcasting classes and things, it used to be the order of things. If a news story happened in the morning, radio was the immediacy. Here's what's happening right now. We can tell you. By noon, 1 o'clock, you tuned into television because now you got pictures.
Right.
And then when you got home, you sat down with the newspaper to find out all the details. That was the supply chain of news.
Right.
When I grew up, anyway. That's long gone now.
I remember a wake-up call when I was a young reporter, probably 1997 or 8. I was at a fire at a house, and it just was happening at the wrong time for us. So I was standing next to the radio guy. I was standing next to, I think it was a TV station out of Toledo, and we're all covering the fire at the same time. So radio guy was almost doing live,
yeah.
Right? And the TV guy was taking all this great video, and that was going to be on, I think, at noon. It was kind of mid-morning. But the paper had come out that day. So my paper was going to publish my story the next day after everybody knew what happened. And I sort of sat there and went, oh, we got to do better at this. And then, thank you, Internet, we were able to.
Yeah. Well, for all of us.
Yes.
For all of us. I mean, right here in this building. And one of the things that drives us, people need to recognize the fact that we all fight for the same advertising pool.
Sure.
And that pool hasn't grown.
It's shrunk. The opposite is true.
It's shrunk, and there are a lot more hands in that pool.
Yes.
But like in this building here, probably a third of what the sales staff spends their time on is digital.
Right.
You have to. Nature of the beast. Take a break. Be back. Dave Clark, our guest, the editor of the Midland Daily News, as we talk about the media.
Did you see Congresswoman Kristen McDonald?
All right, we're back with you, and we are talking to Doug Clark. He is it's Dave Clark, by the way. He is the editor of the Midland Daily News, and we're talking about the media. I started before one of the breaks saying the media is a big word. It's all-encompassing. But it seems to me today, in talking to people, if we bring up the media, their first thought goes to national news, national networks, and all of that, and information, and somewhere along the line, journalism. But the media is a lot more. I mean, if you pick up your cereal box, the artwork on it is media. Somebody designed that artwork. If you go to an art museum, you're looking at media. If you go to the movies, you're watching media. We've kind of usurped that word, haven't we?
We really have, and there probably should be just that distinction between the news media and then every other kind of media, which is more artistic in nature.
I would separate it out by taking the word media out of it and just calling it journalism and media.
Yeah, that's also true. The thing about when you say that, that's such a negative connotation to it, and
well, it does. That's
thing,
why it's created that way.
Yeah, the thing that sort of most people picture is broadcast news. And, from the Don Henley song, Dirty Laundry to, parodies on HBO and things like that, it really, really brings out the worst. There's a show on HBO called The Pit. Okay, it just came out. It's a fantastic show. It's like ER, but even scarier, and it takes place during the course of one day. And during this day, there's a shooting event. And for all the different aspects of the story, the patients that come in, all those different pieces of story that last for 15 episodes. One of the pieces is a guy who is sort of walking around and he's got a camera, and we never establish, the story never establishes who he actually is. But one of the doctors says, I bet he's somebody from the media who snuck in here and he's trying to take pictures and he's trying to make money off of this. And they end up, he ends up slipping and hurting himself, and they like tie him to a bed and, you know, keep him hostage there for the rest of the time. I'm watching this show and I'm thinking, why did you put that in? I don't know any person anywhere at any time that I've ever worked with that would do something like that.
No, because today everybody's got a camera.
Yeah.
Everybody's a, quote, journalist. And therein is the problem with the internet. You don't know who's supplying the information and what their qualifications are.
And that goes back to the media literacy piece. So who really is the media? And again, you know, when you're not paying for a subscription for news, if you're getting that, quote, free from someplace, trust me, somebody's paying those people. Now, who is that? It's a special interest somewhere. It's a political interest. It's a corporate interest. If they're giving it to you for free, it's because they want you to be subjected to that message.
And it also goes back to the business model, because if that person on the internet gets enough viewers, readers, what have you, they get paid by the source, by the platform they're on. And that's how they make their money.
And, you know, not too long ago, there was a story that came out that a whole bunch of podcasters who got famous during this last election cycle, you know, who were they getting paid by? Well, they were getting paid by a foreign country to do particular kinds of stories to influence voters to vote a certain way. So, yeah, there's all sorts of that interference. But when you talk about journalism, when we separate the two, like you've asked, journalism is public service. That's what we do. That's what we do. Whether you call it watchdog journalism or investigative journalism or accountability journalism, that's what it is. It's public service. It's us. Members of the media aren't special. We don't have any special rights or laws or anything like that. We're just citizens that have this job.
It's not technically true. You do have the Constitution behind you, freedom of press. So there are certain guarantees that you have as a professional. However, they also apply to amateurs.
They absolutely do. They absolutely do. So when we talk about things like Freedom of Information Act or Open Meetings Act, those are state laws. They're open to everyone. And the person with their cell phone who wants to record something, whether they cause a confrontation and want to record that and publish it, or whether it's a reporter who's sitting there and asking questions and pressing a public official for an answer to a concern. You know, we're all covered by the same laws, but we do what we do for public service. We do what we do to serve our communities. And that's true of every person that works here in the Great Lakes Bay region.
You know, and that can be carried over to first responders.
Sure.
For example, I'm a support deputy in the Sheriff's Department. I do it to serve my community. But problem is, in every barrel of apples, there's a few bad ones. They make it bad for everyone else. That's true in policing. It's true in media. I don't care what it is. It's true. And they get all the attention.
They do.
I have this political theory. The far left and the far right make all the noise. Most of us don't live there. Most of us live in the middle. Most of us have maybe some conservative views on finances, maybe, and some liberal views on social media, social issues, or just the other way around, you know, or a mix thereof. But all the noise is made on the outsides.
I agree.
And that's what we hear every day, day in, day out. And today the problem is we're flooded with it. We're inundated. You can't get up in the morning without hearing about it, seeing it, reading it, you know, talking about it.
And I would also say that within our industry, within the journalism industry, that bad apple doesn't last very long.
No.
We've been pretty good when it comes to plagiarism, ethical issues, and things like that. We police our own people pretty well, and that's because we are so sensitive to those reputational attacks.
sensitive to that, and also sensitive to the liability that goes.
Yeah,
with
there's
it.
lawsuits too. Yeah, that's why we have lawyers.
We'll take a break, and we'll be back with Dave Clark for one more segment. Let me chat with you about McDonald Ford in Freeland, my car dealer, where you've probably noticed it's getting harder and harder to find products made in America. And now with the uncertainty of tariffs, it's become even more important. And McDonald Ford, in anticipation of the tariffs, have stocked their lot with tariff-free vehicles, and many more are en route. Not only are they tariff-free, but Ford is offering employee pricing for everyone. That means you pay the same price as a Ford employee. In addition, Chrysler and import buyers considering a Ford also receive the lowest price offered. Chevy truck buyers can now get the truck they wanted, the Ford F-150, also at employee pricing. So you see, now's the right time to visit McDonald Ford M47 in Freeland for the best selection and the lowest possible price. Don't let tariffs prevent you from getting the vehicle of your choice at a price you can afford. Visit McDonald Ford in Freeland today. Remember, tariff-free and employee pricing for everyone. All right, we're back with you. One more segment here with Dave Clark, the editor of the Midland Daily News. So let's look at the Clark crystal ball.
Right. Sure.
5-10 years down the road, let's start with the Midland Daily News. What's it going to look like?
Pretty much the same. Pretty much the same. Our company, Hearst, is
That's right, you are a Hearst paper.
We are a Hearst
There's
paper.
This little town in Michigan is one of the biggest press organizations in the world.
$6 billion a year, whatever we made last year. So it's San Francisco Chronicle, Houston Chronicle, lots of papers,
lots of big ones,
lots of television stations. Yep. So and still basically a family company. So we don't have the same pressure for stock prices and returns on investment and that kind of stuff. So that's one of those reasons why things aren't going to change. I think 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we'll be pretty much where we're at. Hopefully we will have innovated and done some new things. The latest thing that we're doing that seems to be really popular with readers is the newsletter that I do. So every day, 7 days a week. So not more frequently than print. 7 days.
When don't you print?
Sunday.
Which is interesting because Sunday used to be the big one, and it was mostly ads.
It did, but we deliver the newspaper through the mail now, so that wouldn't work out for us very well on a Sunday.
Oh,
yeah.
You don't have delivery folks anymore, huh?
We have the U.S. Post Office, which is the most reliable delivery folks, and that's why we use them, and they're really good to us. So
that's good. Good
yeah.
to hear.
And we get to support a great American institution, the post office. So yeah, I think the newsletter really is showing us that, okay, people want to hear from us in a more personal way. They want it delivered specifically to them. You may see more newsletters tailored to specific interests like arts, sports, things like that. I think that'll be part of what we do. I don't see us getting into a whole lot of podcasts and videos, but that's always on the table. If our readers decide that they want to hear this voice more, I don't know why they would, but maybe they will.
Nothing wrong with it.
We'll provide that for them too. But I think the changes largely that we'll make in the next decade will be dictated by our audience, the people that want to do business with us as subscribers and also advertisers. And events. We'll probably do more events in the future. As a matter of fact, if I can plug it really quickly,
away.
One of the things that Hearst does is the Great Lakes Beer Festival, which is going to be August 16th this year at Dow Diamond. We've got like 100 of the best breweries in the state of Michigan and through the Midwest.
No kidding.
And it's right there at Dow Diamond. So unlike those other beer festivals where you're out in a field somewhere with a bunch of porta potties, you're in a fantastic facility. You got real bathrooms. You got real food. And usually, if we time it just right, you can watch a Lions preseason game on the big screen there at Dow
I
Dining.
don't drink, but I'll come to that festival.
Well, we have non-alcoholic beer too. That is delicious.
Yep.
And so that is the 16th. But coming up just next week is actually a little bit of a promo kickoff to that. It's on Saturday, April 26th at Venue 63. It's the Great Lakes Beer Festival Chili Cook-Off.